When the end of the Second World War, when the Allied forces finally entered the heart of Nazi-occupied Europe, the scale of what had been built, hidden, and perfected by the Third Reich began to emerge in fragments. What the world would eventually understand was not merely a sequence of isolated crimes, but a fully integrated system of terror. A structure so vast and methodical that reshaped entire regions, industries, and human lives with chilling efficiency. For survivors like Irene Vogel Weiss, the story did not begin with barbed wire or gas chambers. It began in an ordinary small town in Czechoslovakia, where daily life once followed familiar rhythms. Families worked, children attended school, neighbors greeted one another. That sense of normalcy eroded gradually, then all at once, as Nazi ideology spread beyond Germany's borders and redefined who was permitted to belong to society and who was marked for elimination. When Hungary annexed the region and aligned itself with Nazi Germany, life transformed almost overnight. Laws changed, businesses were seized. Neighbors who had once exchanged pleasantries now wore armbands bearing swastikas and enforced racial decrees with frightening enthusiasm. For Jewish families, existence itself became a crime. Wearing the yellow star was not just a symbol of exclusion, it was an invitation to abuse, humiliation, and violence. Children like Irene learned quickly that survival no longer depended on innocence, but on chance. Her father's lumber business was confiscated without compensation. The family's livelihood vanished, replaced by uncertainty and fear. The concept was simple and devastating. Guilt was assigned at birth. Entire communities were criminalized for existing. The machinery of terror did not rely solely on SS officers or German soldiers. It depended on ordinary citizens empowered by ideology to act as enforcers. By 1944, the illusion of relocation gave way to reality. Jewish families were herded into ghettos, stripped of dignity under the guise of sanitation and order. Heads were shaved, personal identities erased. When Irene and her family were forced into cattle cars, packed tightly with thousands of others, the journey itself became a prelude to death. Days passed without food, water, or air. Darkness swallowed time. Rumors circulated, mass shootings, camps in Poland. But the idea of industrialized murder remained unimaginable to many. The human mind resists truths too monstrous to accept. When the train finally stopped at Auschwitz-Birkenau, confusion gave way to terror. Orders were shouted, families were torn apart in seconds. Smoke rose from chimneys in the distance, though few understood what it meant. The process was efficient, practiced, and brutally fast. A single gesture of a stick or a hand decided life or death. The elderly, children, and the weak were sent one way. Those deemed capable of labor were sent another. Irene survived her first selection not through strength, but through accident. Her shaved head, her clothing, the hesitation of a guard, these small variables tipped the scale. Her mother and younger brothers were sent toward the gas chambers. She would never see them again. Inside the camp, the reality became unavoidable. Mountains of stolen possessions bore silent witness to the scale of the crime. Prisoners worked endlessly, sorting the belongings of people who had already been murdered. When Irene asked where her family was, an older prisoner pointed to the smoke rising from the crematoria. The truth was no longer abstract. It was visible, constant, and suffocating. Auschwitz functioned as a factory of death. Trains arrived day and night. Gas chambers operated continuously. Up to 10,000 people could be killed in a single day. The system was not improvised, it was engineered. Every element, deception, transport, selection, extermination, disposal, was optimized for speed and psychological control. Victims were kept calm until the final moments, told they were showering, disinfecting, relocating. Panic was inefficient. Silence was useful. But Auschwitz was only one node in a vast network. Mauthausen, in Austria, represented another face of Nazi extermination. Built as a stone fortress overlooking a quarry, it embodied the fusion of ideology and labor. Prisoners were not merely killed, they were worked to death. Hunger, exhaustion, and violence were constant. The infamous stairs of death forced inmates to carry massive granite blocks up steep steps over and over until bodies collapsed. Guards did not intervene to preserve life, they intervened to prolong suffering. Those deemed too weak to continue were sent to killing centers like Hartheim Castle, where death was processed with bureaucratic efficiency. Thousands were murdered within hours, their lives reduced to numbers on a ledger. As Allied bombing intensified, Nazi leadership retreated underground, literally and figuratively. Entire tunnel systems were carved beneath mountains and cities. Underground factories like Gusen II produced advanced weapons using slave labor. Prisoners assembled jet fighters and missile components deep beneath the earth, working on technologies that would prolong the war and intensify destruction, even as they themselves starved and died. The irony was absolute. Victims were forced to build the tools of their own annihilation. By early 1945, as the Reich collapsed, desperation intensified brutality. Death marches emptied camps as prisoners were driven deeper into Germany, shot if they faltered. Irene, her sister Serena, and their aunt endured freezing marches without food or shelter. Survival became an act of defiance against exhaustion. Even amid terror, moments of humanity surfaced. When Soviet prisoners escaped Mauthausen, local civilians faced impossible choices. Some joined the manhunt, others risked everything to hide fugitives, knowing discovery meant death. Of hundreds who escaped, only a handful survived, a stark measure of how thoroughly terror had infiltrated society. In the final weeks of the war, chaos disrupted even the machinery of death. Irene volunteered to join her sister in what she believed would be extermination, unwilling to be left alone. The train never came. Front lines shifted, orders collapsed. Survival, once again, came down to timing. Liberation did not bring immediate relief. Survivors emerged skeletal, diseased, traumatized. Families were gone, communities erased. For Irene, the sight of children after the war was shocking, a reminder of a world where childhood had been systematically exterminated. The architects of terror faced uneven justice. Some were tried, many were not. Irene later testified against Oskar Groening, a former Auschwitz officer who had collected valuables from victims. Sitting just feet away from him, she searched for remorse. She found none sufficient to match the scale of the crime. Her warning remains clear. Genocide does not begin with gas chambers. It begins with propaganda, with dehumanization, with obedience framed as patriotism. The Nazi system of terror ensnared both victims and perpetrators, stripping humanity from all involved. The lesson is not confined to history. It is a warning. When people stop questioning, stop empathizing, stop analyzing what they are told, systems of terror can rise again, wearing new faces, speaking new languages, but driven by the same machinery of hate. And that is why these stories must be told. Not for revenge, not for spectacle, but because forgetting is the final victory of the system that once turned the world into a factory of death.